I am back to do a video, video number 3. Thank you so much for subscribing, those that did, and a ton of comments. Really enjoy interacting with the comments. Big shout out to Chance, concert buddy, and Rob at Northern Revolutions. I was able to jump on their live streams over the last couple weeks. It's been a blast interacting with everyone in the VC, really enjoying this. Today's video, so I've mentioned in the previous videos, my kind of goal as a listener is to just sort of sit down with an entire album, start to finish, as the artist intended. It's not always the case, but I try to do that. But there are some albums that have songs on them that, and while I do love the entire album, sometimes I just cheat and go right to that song. So I thought I'd put together 10 albums that I own that have a song that kind of steals the album. And it doesn't mean the rest of the album is bad, it just means that these are songs on albums that if I just really want to have that quick hit, I will go for that one song. And the album that kind of started this idea in my head was the Analog Productions pressing of Leonard Skinner's debut album. Right, so this album came out in '73. I think Freebird was a single in '74, I read. And so, yeah, it's a masterpiece. It takes up a whole side, 45 RPM, cut by Ryan Smith. Really great stuff, fills the room, great soundstage. Those crescendos towards the end. Yeah, I play this album louder than any other. It's fantastic. Freebird, are you sick of it? Maybe, but it's a friggin' masterpiece and you know it, and I know it. And that's why this album, sometimes I just put that on. The rest of the album, outstanding, great, and the whole album is sonically spectacular. Great album, great song, and sometimes just the one song will do. Another pressing masterpiece. I have Kevin Gray's version of Kevin Gray's mastering on this. Have you seen this before? Probably, yeah, maybe. It's a little known hit from the 70s. Album was released in '77, and this is the 2020 reissue, like I said, by Kevin Gray, cut at 45, wins the shootouts. Apparently it's the sonic masterpiece of this catalog. The song I go to on this, last track, Gold Dust Woman. I don't know why I gravitated towards that song. It is just so beautiful. I think I really like the psychedelic kind of tinges, especially towards the end of the song. Really good song, and again, an album that can go on start to finish and I'll thoroughly enjoy it. Sometimes I'll just skip right to the end and go right to Gold Dust Woman. Beautiful song, sounds incredible. Here's a band I don't know really much of at all, but this guy at work, a buddy of mine, sent me a YouTube video of this band playing this particular song, and I didn't know anything about it. I had heard of the band, and but anyway, so I found this album for cheap, had the song on it, I picked it up, listened to the whole album. Sure, it's got some good stuff on it, but that first track, the opening track of their debut album, Dr. Hook, so Sylvia's Mother. So Sylvia's Mother, what a great song, just lyrically a beautiful song. The video I watched on YouTube, actually there's a few albums I'm going to show today that the song that I really love that I go to right away has a corresponding like version of it on YouTube, like a live version or something. Great stuff. Anyway, Sylvia's Mother. If you don't know that song, just stream it. I know Dr. Hook's catalog's pretty eclectic and kind of strange to some, but beautiful song. Like the lyrics are incredible. It will move you. Anyway, check it out. Sylvia's Mother from 1972 debut album from Dr. Hook. Here's another weird one. Again, good example of a song that's got a great YouTube video for it. When I started collecting vinyl, what I would find in the dollar bins would be a lot of Bob Seger stuff. And I didn't give much attention to Bob Seger. And then I brought some of those albums home, Stranger in Town, Night Moves, and they're friggin' fantastic. Started digging into his back catalog a little more. And somehow across the algorithms on YouTube, thank you, I came across him as Bob Seger in The Last Herd. And they had this album was put out by Third Man, or pressed at Third Man Records. It's kind of a compilation album of all the very, very early stuff that Seger did before he went to the Bob Seger system, and then, which is obviously before he went with the Silver Bullet Band, right? So anyway, some great stuff on this. So this is a 2018 US comp, pressed at Third Man, like I said. The song that I go to right away, East Side Story. And there is, if you look it up on YouTube, Bob Seger, Last Heard, East Side Story, there's this great footage of him on some kind of, I forget what the name of the show was in the States, but really cool performance, kind of just sort of a pop rock song, I guess. Really great stuff. A lot of respect for Bob Seger. Don't know too much aside from the albums I named before, but just a great Detroit rocker that, you know, really killed it and was very authentic with his music, right? So East Side Story is great. Another great song on this is Heavy Music, and that's probably a more popular one. But anyway, check that song out, East Side Story, Bob Seger and The Last Herd. Last couple of videos, or I think maybe it was my first video that I did, talked about Chicago. Got a lot of praise for Chicago's early work. So here's another Chicago album, the only other one I own. So I own CTA, and then I got the Chicago, or Chicago 2, I guess it's called. So this was released in January 1970. Their second studio album. This is when they kind of adopted the band name and actually the band logo as well, which is, you know, iconic. So this band was formed in '67. Again, talked about this before, kind of a rock, almost jazz rock. The further into their catalog it seems you go, the more kind of jazz influence there are. But I got this album specifically for one song. Sure, I listened to the whole album, it's really good and stuff, but 25 or 624. And is it because of Terry Kath's raw pedal work on the solo? Yes, it is. Is there a great YouTube video of this song, them performing it live with Terry Kath kicking ass? Yes, there is. Check it out. 25 or 624, amazing song. The second single off the album. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Terry Kath is awesome, and that is one of the best songs. And I go to it a lot. This one is kind of a heavier spin lately for me. Kind of not a new band, but new to me band. I've heard of their work and I know their #1 classic hit. But then I just grabbed this album because it was for cheap. It was in pretty decent shape. So this is the band Free. This is their debut album, March 1969. Blues rock kind of stuff. They were all under 20 at the time when I was doing research for the video. I read that. I'm like, oh my God, just another example of a wicked band. And they're like basically teenagers and they're putting this kind of stuff together. Fronted by a guy named Paul Rogers, which I have to shout out because he's got some Canadian heritage there. So I'll say that. This is a US Monarch Press OG, so it's a pretty good pressing of the album. Anyway, the songs on this that I like, I said songs, it's kind of a cheat. It's supposed to be one song, Jason, one song per album. So, but the first track is only like 40 seconds and it bleeds so nicely into the second track. So, Over the Green Hills and followed by the song Worry. So, Worry by Free. Just incredible. Just a great blues rock song. I don't know how many times I've listened to this in the last 3 or 4 days. And I even like made my buddy listen to it. When he didn't, I kind of texted him again and said, you got to stream this, dude. Like, listen to this song. It's actually really good. Thanks, Taylor, for listening. More modern day bands, I guess you could say. Band of Horses. Okay, if you don't know Band of Horses, they came out of Seattle, I think in was it like 2007 or no, maybe early 2000s. They came out of Seattle. They're kind of home base now is South Carolina. That's where Ben Bridewell, I think his name is the lead singer and kind of the only constant member of the band. Anyway, they got a pretty decent catalog. The earlier stuff I seem to gravitate towards a little more. This is their second studio album, kind of described as indie rock or maybe even like power pop. 2004, that's when they formed in 2004 in Seattle. Anyway, so this is 2007, this is a US OG of the album, and the song on this that I typically go to right away is the General Specific. It wasn't the single off the album, but just, again, kind of power pop and just, you know, a great song, makes you feel good. Yeah, not much to say about it except it's a good band, and I only own a couple of their albums. I'll probably end up being a completist on them, but there's definitely some good stuff in their catalog that are aside from the singles. Anyway, Band of Horses. The album's called Cease to Begin, and the song is The General Specific. Okay, this will get a few laughs. If you know, you know. If you're in the VC, it probably means you've watched the movie High Fidelity, right? And what does Rob sell in High Fidelity? He sells this album. I think he sells it on CD, but that's okay. So this is the 3 EPs by the Beta Band. So fantastic album. One of the first albums when I got into vinyl, I was like, I need to own this. I'm going to own this album. And I'm going to own it for one song in particular, and that's the song that he plays in the movie Dry the Rain. Okay, so this is a 1998 release. It's actually a compilation of 3 EPs, who would have thought? So 3 EPs that the Beta Band had put out, they kind of just put them all together and released it as an album, right? So 1998, this is the release. It's a group that formed in Scotland in 1996. I was looking up how to describe them, and some words that came up were folktronica, psych electronica, probably the most out there. It's not even all that out there for most people, I get it, for my listening on the electronica side of things, but really great album. I spun this whole thing start to finish the other night. It was incredible, but typically I'll just throw on that first track for Dry the Rain. So if you haven't seen that clip, go check out that clip from High Fidelity. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Oh yeah, and the interesting other fact that I picked up on this is when High Fidelity came out, I think the album, what did I write down here? the album sales quadrupled because of that scene, right? And this was years after the album had come out, right? So anyway, Dry the Rain, the Beta Band, 3 EPs. Great song. There's other great songs on this as well, but that was the song that got me into them, and that's the song I spin the most from the album. Another newer band and a big favorite of mine for sure, Black Keys. So, Attack and Release, the Black Keys. The song on this that I choose is actually the opening track, All You Ever Wanted. Super powerful crescendo towards the end that just kind of fills the room. It's a great pressing. It's mastered by Ludwig, pressed at, this is pressed at Palace, that's right. So sounds great. It's a US reissue, but this album originally came out in 2008. It was their 5th studio album, and this was the one that Danger Mouse came out for. And I think he came out for a few of them, but Danger Mouse was on this album, and it definitely has a more professional, polished kind of sound. They say that this was kind of the first album where they were like in a professional sort of studio setting, and they kind of took a bit of a different turn. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. And just like another album there, whatever it was, the album by Free, there's kind of a cheat here too. The first 2 songs are pretty kick-ass. Well, I like the whole album, obviously, but All You Ever Wanted, and then right after that is I Got Mine, which I think is one of the singles, which, if that comes on, I really have trouble turning it off. Anyway, Black Keys, Attack and Release, All You Ever Wanted. And finally, I started with an Analog Productions title. I'm going to finish with an Analog Productions title. This, I think it was my first purchase from Analog Productions. I knew it was good and people were talking about it in the VC, and I knew I've seen some cheaper versions out there, but I wanted the best quality one, and I got it. So another 45 RPM cut. This is Otis Blue, so Otis Redding sings soul. Fantastic album, wicked pressing, 45 RPM. This was his 3rd studio release, released in 1965. And again, this is not just a repress, this is the repress or reissue. 2016 from Analog Productions, Kevin Gray mastered, and it's the opening track, Old Man Trouble, that Otis wrote himself. There's a few covers on this album, but that was one of the ones he penned. And yeah, another fantastic pressing that just fills the room. Very full, beautiful sound. Can't get enough of this guy and his voice. It's just perfect, right? I have a couple Otis albums, but this is always the one that takes the cake. And that one song, Old Man Trouble, it goes on, and sometimes I listen to the whole album, but that song gets a lot of play. Anyway, so that's it, VC. That's just another video for you. Thanks again for watching all these. Thanks for subbing and commenting. I really enjoy the interaction with the community out there. I guess that's it. Spin it often, spin it loud. See ya.